Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Evie.
I think maybe the first time we noticed something was different with Evie was maybe 4 months, 5 months old. But there were just a few little things that we noticed.
Happy birthday.
Unlike the rushing tide, suspicion slowly seeps in and can be as ominous as an erratic tapping at the window of your soul. An uneasiness paces the corridors of your heart until finally a question unfolds.
I remember at her 2-month well baby check, the doctor telling us with a big beam on his face, you have a healthy 2-month-old. I think we were becoming, aware that it wasn't just mellow when she was about 6 months or so. At the time when she would normally be getting, strength to sit. And she clearly had no strength to sit. And by 8 months, and she still wasn't sitting, we knew that we were dealing with something, larger. Yeah.
In the back of your mind, you still go, she's just developing at her own pace. And then, as the months go by, then you start to acknowledge that, okay, something maybe isn't the right or normal here.
I think the first word that was thrown out, was that she might have CP. It doesn't sort of sink in, it just sort of spears through you. And it was painful for us. Because I remember working at the orthopedic surgeon's office, and again we saw severely affected kids with cerebral palsy. And I saw 2 different sets of families. There were families that came in with their kids. The mom and dad would come, they'd drive an hour with their kids, kid lived in the home. And then there was the other children that were brought in by their group home attendants. You can see how hard it can be for families. Again, a disabled child can either sink a family or make them stronger. And I think before Evie, I would have been too afraid to ever accept that responsibility.
I started seeing Evie at 8 months, and she was originally diagnosed with cerebral palsy. I kind of never felt that she exactly fit the CP diagnosis. Her path, her movement path, and her learning curve was way different than a child with cerebral palsy. And I've worked with 2 other kids with Angelman's, and her movements to me were more like their movement patterns, and muscle tone was more similar. The parents and Grandma had both asked me what I thought. I said, well, CP is possible, but there's also another diagnosis that is also a possibility. But that wasn't ever really accepted by the medical community until she had her seizure.
I first met Evie, I think a little over a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, when her parents brought her to see me because she was having seizures. And my initial evaluation suggested not only that she was having seizures and needed some medication to treat those, but that she had an underlying undiagnosed condition.
I think one of the worst things for me was dreaming one of those nights that she had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and then having that dream be so bad that I woke up, and all my other bad dreams before, you wake up and you go, oh, it's just a dream. But in this instance, it wasn't a dream, and I'll never forget that. That was the worst, I think, reality check for me, was waking up from that nightmare and realizing it was life and it wasn't changeable.
I tell myself it will be soon, for I have learned to lie well. But I have not learned to believe. I am still unconvinced. I have more doubt than hope most of the day.
We tried to get someone to write an authorization so that she could have the genetic testing. And that was very exasperating for the family, because they would take her to the doctor, and the doctor would say, well, you need to go to the neurologist, and the neurologist would say, I really don't think that she fits the Angelman's profile. and so therefore the insurance company wouldn't pay.
We had a lot of problems with getting the insurance to approve genetic testing. Our primary care physician had to submit a request for genetic testing to begin with, and that was denied. And he submitted, a stronger request, and that was denied.
And they were really looking for a neurologist to recommend it, and the neurologist we had at that time, his attitude was basically, well, you really don't need to know. It's not going to change, she's not going to get worse, so you don't really need to know what to call it.
Following that, we went to see a different neurologist, and that neurologist actually felt quite differently about the need to know, and he submitted a request for the genetic testing.
After my initial evaluation of Evie, when I suspected that she might have Angelman, I went ahead and asked for permission to order the blood test, and I also requested consultation with the pediatric geneticists here at UCLA, because I know they're also quite experienced with this condition. And in this particular case, my understanding was that the insurance company did determine that they would not reimburse for a genetics consultation, but they did pay or provide for the test result. So then the test result came to me, and then subsequently I've worked with Evie without the direct input of my genetics colleagues. Although we were not able to obtain the genetics consultation, we did get the testing, and it showed that she had an abnormality of chromosome 15. Angelman syndrome is the disorder that I diagnosed Evie with, and it is a specific genetic syndrome that involves developmental delay and has been determined to be due to a problem with deletion of DNA material from the 15th chromosome.
Angelman's is a genetic disorder that causes what they call global deficits, and that means almost everything's affected. Her motor skills, her cognitive skills. There are some physical features that accompany it. Like a lot of things, there's not kind of a single profile, and among the most impacted is language and spoken language. In fact, language is not expected to develop at all in children with Angelman's.
For us, whenever we found out the results of the genetic testing and that she had Angelman's, I think to some degree there was maybe a little relief because they finally knew what it was.
I think from our perspective, genetic testing was very important because we wanted to find out if there was what Evie had. I mean, even more than finding out from a clinical perspective, there's some part of your soul that you want to know what your child has. And there's some closure to that. I think it's been critical.
I really need to emphasize that for genetic conditions, if you can determine a specific diagnosis, it makes a tremendous impact for the family, because parents want to know, can they have other children? You know, what's the likelihood of this happening again? Does this genetic condition suggest that, you know, one of them may have problems as they got older? People want to know that kind of thing. Also, if you have a child who has developmental delay and no specific other diagnosis, you're really in the dark about what to expect for the future, because you just don't know. You don't have anybody else to compare to. When you can obtain a specific diagnosis, even when it's a diagnosis of a condition that doesn't have a specific treatment, at least the parents and the physician are then aware of what to expect and what to anticipate for this child's needs in the future. You know, even if the medicine that I give to a particular child doesn't change, certainly my approach to that child and what I can explain to the family is greatly affected by getting the genetic test results.
No one had anything to say. A clear stone lay amongst the pebbles. Its smooth surfaces were faceted around the crystal. The sides had been worn and cut by time, making a prism. To the naked eye it was pretty, yet people thought it had no function. It was not until the light penetrated the prism that the rainbow was revealed.
My name is Alouette, and I'm 7-year-old, and I'm Evie's big sister. I have 2 sisters.
I think Alouette has really become a more compassionate individual, having a sister, a sibling who is disabled. You know, I think originally she was hurt like we were, that she wasn't going to have a sister to play with so much.
When Mommy and Daddy die, I'll take care of Evie so she doesn't wander off.
So, about how old do you think you'll be?
Well, pretty much for the rest of my life, so I think I'll be probably near 129 in those ages. I want to be a scientist to figure out how we can cure Evie, and I also want to be a doctor to take care of Evie sometimes, and I want to be a mommy too.
Alouette got the idea to be a doctor or a scientist of her own accord. We never, I mean, she's only 7. We haven't done any coaching yet. Mind you, I have that in plan for her. Just kidding.
Yeah, we're buying Grey's Anatomy for next year. And then,
I have no idea where she came up with that, apart from she goes with us to all the doctor visits. We've always done things as a group, as a family, and we haven't given Alouette over to a grandma while we take Evie to a doctor visit. Or every time Evie's had a seizure and we've gone to the emergency room, she's gone too. So Alouette knows and understands the roles of doctors and how they've helped Evie, and I can only imagine that she's made the correlation and seen how important doctors have been in Evie's life, and how much she loves and wants to help her sister.
Yeah, I remember in the Bible story, God healed someone who is blind. Well, sometimes I pray for Evie, and I pray that they will grow up to be normal and not have Angelman's either. And I pray for Evie that they'll find a cure.
Evie loves life. She's just a ray of sunshine. You can have the worst days, and you just look at her, and she just has a smile for everyone. I look at her, and she gives me the perspective of what, even on the darkest days, it's what joy is all about. I just totally enjoy being with her.
I feel that that Evie is a blessing to all of us. I think she's taught all of us a lot.
Beautiful and fair, your captivating smile pushes the corners of my sadness aside. Your sweetness scribbles love in my heart and paints a rainbow in the sky. I long to hear the words hidden from your mouth. I listen. What I hear are the voices of others whom God has sent. They have sorrows, but have never had my ears to hear them. Though you do not speak, my precious one, you have unlocked the doors of silence by teaching me to listen.
The loss of Dream is such a hard hurdle to get over, because it really cuts to the quick. There's disappointment in letting go of those dreams, and that for me was the hardest, letting go of the dreams of what I thought she would be, and on a practical level, not getting to, hear her say those funny little things that only 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds say, their perspectives on things. So I miss that.
Kind of put your mind into perspective on maybe what the value you place on dreams, and that you have an idea of what dreams you think would give you happiness, but then you're shown new dreams that are equally or more fulfilling. Yeah. It would just be wonderful to hear some, I love you, Mommy, or I love you, Daddy. It would be a wonderful thing to hear out of her mouth. But I think on the other side, we're confident we're going to hear that in heaven. So I think we were intended to have Evie, and
there's comfort in the knowledge of that. And
yeah, well, I think as we've learned, and I think anybody hearing this interview has learned, Evie's a wonderful individual. She's so full of joy, and we are seeing a different side of life than we ever would have seen and experienced. And we all have certain dreams and what we think is happiness to us. And looking back on that, I don't think we've really had any loss. To touch on the question, it's really new dreams have been realized. And gosh, did I ever think that I would derive such joy from seeing my daughter stand alone, unheld the first time? Never would have guessed that. And when Evie stood, you know, for 10 seconds without holding on to someone's hand, it was just such a beautiful thing. And
yeah, I think we've both been taught that. I often have the feeling that I'm really thankful to have an Angelman kid, you know, and I'm thankful to feel that way now that, you know, that she's only 4, because for some people I don't know if that ever comes for them.